The seed that wouldn't stay buried. A story written for you. Close your eyes and breathe. There was once a man named Arjun who decided to grow something in the middle of a city that had never seen a garden. He didn't have land. He didn't have money. He had an idea, a rooftop, and a stubbornness that people mistook for optimism. In the beginning, everything said yes. The rains came at the right time. The seeds sprouted. People stopped on the street to look up at the green that had appeared where concrete used to be. He felt, for the first time in his life, that he was doing exactly what he was supposed to do. Then the landlord raised the rent. Then the water line broke. Then the seeds he had ordered from a supplier he trusted, the supplier he had built a relationship with over 2 years, arrived dead. All of them. Just like that. Dead in their packets. Never told why. Arjun sat in the dry soil of that rooftop and stared at his hands. He thought, if I were meant to do this, would it be this hard? Would every wall have a crack running through it? Would every yes eventually become a no? An old woman who sold jasmine at the corner of his street watched him sitting there one evening. She came up the stairs, slowly, deliberately, and sat beside him without being invited. She said, "You think the river hates the stone?" Arjun looked at her. "What?" She said, "The river bends around every stone. It doesn't fight the stone. It doesn't cry about the stone. It just finds the way the stone left open." She paused. The stone doesn't know it is making the river stronger. It just sits there, being a stone. She went back downstairs and never said another word about it. Arjun rebuilt the rooftop garden. Not the same way. That version was gone. He rebuilt it with smaller containers. He found local suppliers. He stored his own seeds. He stopped depending on anyone holding something he couldn't replace. Years later, when people asked him how he built one of the most followed urban farming communities in India, he always told them the same thing. "I didn't build it despite the failures. I built it from them. Every suspension, every broken supplier, every system that shut me out, they were architects. I just showed up every morning and used what they left behind." He paused, then added, "The river never hated the stone. It just became more powerful because of it." The river finds others. Some stories end with one person standing. Arjun's didn't. It kept going, the way a river does. Not because it wanted to, but because that is simply what rivers do. They move. They find the lowest ground. They fill what is empty. 3 years after the rooftop in Delhi, a girl named Meera sent him a message. She was 19. She lived in a 4th-floor flat in Dharavi, the kind of flat where the kitchen window faces another kitchen window, close enough to pass a cup of tea between them. She had read about Arjun in a small article in a newsletter no one had heard of. The article had 11 readers. She was one of them. She wrote, "I have a window ledge. It gets 4 hours of sun. I want to grow food. Everyone is telling me I'm being stupid. Please tell me they're wrong." Arjun almost didn't reply. He had learned by then that hope is a heavy thing to carry for someone else. If he said yes, keep going, and she failed, that weight would come back to him. He had enough weight of his own. But he remembered the woman with the jasmine, how she had sat beside him without being invited, how she had said the thing he needed to hear and then walked away. He wrote back 3 words. "They are wrong." Meera grew spinach on that ledge, then methi, then cherry tomatoes that spilled over the sill like tiny red lanterns visible from the street below. Her neighbor across the gap, a retired schoolteacher named Mr. Pillai, who had not smiled in 4 years, started watching her. One morning he knocked on her door and asked what she was doing. She told him. He went back to his flat and moved a chair to his window. The week after, he had coriander. This is how it happens. Not with announcements, not with funding rounds or press releases or government schemes. Not with a single hero standing on a stage. It happens ledge by ledge, window by window, rooftop by rooftop. One person does the impossible thing in front of another person who didn't know the impossible thing was possible. And then that person does it. And then the next. Arjun started getting messages. Dozens, then hundreds. A farmer's son from Yavatmal, the district in Vidarbha where the cotton suicides happen, where the earth has been wrung dry by debt and chemicals, who had left for Pune to work in a warehouse. He messaged at 2 a.m., "My father lost everything to the land. I don't want to go back, but I miss growing things. Is that stupid?" It wasn't stupid. A software engineer in Bangalore named Priya, who had quit her job in the middle of a good salary because she felt like she was disappearing, who had started a terrace garden and then a community group and then accidentally become the person her entire apartment complex came to with questions about soil and water and what was wrong with their plants. She didn't ask Arjun for anything. She just wrote to say, "I think you started something." He didn't feel like he had started something. He felt like he had tripped, and people had followed him off the edge, and somehow they were all flying. There was a night, this is the part no one writes about, when he sat in his expanded rooftop space, now with 17 growing stations and a waiting list of 50 people who wanted to learn, and he felt something close to terror. Because it is one thing to refuse to quit when it's your own life. It is another thing entirely when other people are watching you, learning from you, building their hope on the blueprint of yours. What if he was wrong? What if the rooftop he had rebuilt was still not stable enough to hold the weight of this? He called his mother that night. She was in Lucknow. She had a small kitchen garden she had tended for 30 years. He had never paid attention to it as a child. It had just been there. The smell of marigolds in the morning, the particular green of curry leaves, the mint that always came back no matter what. He asked her, "Did you ever doubt that things would grow?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Every single year. The monsoon was late, or too much, or the seeds were bad, or the sparrows got to them first. Every single year I thought, this year nothing will come." He said, "And you kept going." She said, "What else would I do? This is how you eat. This is how you live. You don't stop because you're afraid. You stop when there's nothing left to plant, and there is always something left to plant." He understood something then. The knowledge he was carrying was not new. It was ancient. It was in every home that had ever kept a pot of tulsi by the door, in every grandmother who had saved seeds in a steel box between saris, in every farmer who had looked at a ruined crop and started again, not out of optimism, but out of the simple human refusal to let the earth be the last word. This knowledge had been in India for 10,000 years. He wasn't inventing anything. He was just reminding people of what they already knew. The river doesn't create water. It just shows it where to go.
The novel that hasn't been written yet. Every civilization that has ever existed was built on the same foundation. Not steel, not code, not capital. Soil. The ability to take a seed, something smaller than a thought, and coax it into food, into medicine, into the green that makes oxygen, that makes breath, that makes everything else possible. For most of human history, this was not a skill. It was not a hobby. It was life itself. We forgot. Not all at once, slowly, the way you lose a language when you stop speaking it. First the harder words, then the easy ones. Then one morning you realize you've been thinking in a different tongue for years, and you don't remember when the switch happened. We moved to cities. We learned to optimize and automate and scale. We learned to order food in 4 minutes and have it arrive still warm. And somewhere in that forgetting, we lost the feeling, the particular satisfaction of something growing because you tended it, the knowledge that the earth is not scenery behind the real story of human life, but the story itself, the first story, the only story. Arjun knew this now. He was 34. He had a rooftop, a community, a network of growers across 12 Indian cities, a waiting list, a WhatsApp group where people shared photos of their first tomato at midnight and got replies from strangers who understood exactly why that tomato mattered. He had not changed the world. He had changed some windows, some ledges, some lives. But something was pushing at him from the inside, a sentence arriving every morning before he was fully awake. Someone needs to write this down. Not a post, not a thread, a novel, the story of what food actually is, of what soil remembers, of what happens to a people when they forget how to grow things, and what becomes possible when they remember. Because data changes minds, but stories change people. There is an India that exists in parallel to the India of offices and apps and ambition, an India of seeds, of seasons, of the particular intelligence of a person who can read the sky and know it will rain in 4 hours, of the farmer in Kutch who coaxes food from soil that most people would call dead. This India does not trend. It just grows, quietly, generation after generation, and it is disappearing, not because it failed, but because the story being told about the future has not made room for it, has not told the billion people living between these two Indias that there is a third way. A way to be modern and rooted, building tomorrow and remembering what made yesterday worth living. Arjun sat with a blank page for a long time. He was not a writer, he was a grower, but he had learned something about stories by now. You don't need to know how to write, you need to know what is true. He wrote the first line. There are a billion people in this country who have never held a seed, and every one of them is descended from someone who could not have survived without one. He stopped. He looked at the tomatoes, the spinach, the young man from Yavatmal who had come last weekend and cried, silently, with his hands in the grow medium, saying nothing, needing to say nothing. He thought about all the stories not yet told. The farmer's daughter in Tamil Nadu learning hydroponics on a cracked phone screen. The retired engineer in Jaipur who turned his terrace into a food forest and now feeds his building. The 12-year-old in Calcutta who asked why they couldn't grow food on the school roof, and the teacher who, for the first time, didn't know why not. All of them were chapters. All of them were waiting. This novel doesn't have an ending yet, because the story of how a civilization remembers what it forgot, how it comes back to the earth it left, slowly and imperfectly and one rooftop at a time, that story is still being written. Every seed germinating in a Dharavi window is a sentence. Every midnight photo of a first tomato is a paragraph. Every young person who decides that growing food is not backward but radical, not a retreat from the future, but the most important thing they can do for it, is a chapter. The novel is being written, not by one person, by everyone who ever looked at a small piece of soil and thought, something could grow here. And here is the moral this story carries quietly in its roots. We do not lose our civilization in explosions. We lose it in forgetting, small forgetting, daily forgetting, the kind that feels like progress. To remember where your food comes from is not nostalgia. It is the most revolutionary act left. The earth has not abandoned us. We simply stopped showing up. And it is waiting, patiently, as soil always does, for us to return. End of the Arjun trilogy.